Well, what's happening? Let's give a little update here on things that I have tried and failed on, and things that I have succeeded on. So in some of my other videos, I had explained where I started with a 3-plate design, two 3mm plates, the Goliath heatsink bolted to the top plate, and initially I had this plate as 3mm, but I noticed that when I grabbed a hold of the extruder, I could flex that nozzle just a little bit on the bottom. I don't really understand how. It doesn't seem like it should move, but perceivably it was. And maybe when I grabbed the tool head, the gantry moved slightly from belt stretch. I don't really know. So I went to a 5mm plate here on the top, and I had it bolted this way with this notched out, the two 3mm plates, and then the carriage was here on these 4 screws sitting in this spot here. The sandwich plate is okay, but it introduces more variables when you try to pivot these two pieces for alignment of the cross. The flatness of it, it's just a little bit more difficult, I think, with this. And I think it weighs a little bit more. So from here I changed over to something like this here, and I think when I started, this plate here was 5mm thick also, but this one is similar to this one, in that the Goliath bolts directly to the standoffs on this bottom plate, and then of course the carriage is moved over to here, similar to this one here. This is almost the same setup, this one and this one, except I want to say, I think that's the same actually. So this is a 3mm plate and this is a 5mm plate, and this seemed to work okay. I had a few bolts here in the back for the tool board. Wow, that's hot. And that bolted here in the bottom, and then it had this little rest where it could hit against this piece, and then I had meant to put a little angle bracket here and bolt it so that it didn't move around. I never did that. I felt it was stiff enough until one day I decided to test with an ADXL with this tie wrapped so it couldn't vibrate and with it loose. And the results were about 600 higher with this tool board mount kind of rigidly put there. So then I said, well, I'm gonna have to do something about that. Apparently this board mounted so low like that, you know, has an effect on those ADXL readings, however much it may be, you know, vibrating there. So I abandoned this idea altogether, and then what I went with was, so this is the VZ backplate, the VZ Hextrudor backplate, and I made a new backplate. This is not the one that's on there. This is one that I tried, and then I still ended up changing. But this lowers that motor, you can see, quite a bit here, and it allows this motor to sit on this lower plate here. That lowers the center of gravity, and so this was one of my initial plates. I think this was the 3rd plate that I made. I had trouble with the first one. I did not skew correct my machine, and when I center punched the holes for this, they were off so slightly that the filament path was pulled over just a little bit, and that sharp edge of that filament path inside the extruder, it was shaving off pieces of filament. So I corrected the skew, center punched again, drilled the holes out, and it fit like a glove. I don't even have adjustments in this particular one because it ended up fitting perfectly. So I went into CAD and I got the gears where I wanted them, And just luckily enough, when I center punch and drill those holes, that motor fits right in the circle of this plate perfectly, and it has the perfect amount of lash on these gears. It just barely has a little bit back and forth is kind of what you want, and it just happened to turn out that way. Normally stuff for me just does not happen to turn out perfect by any means. So so basically this is what I have here, except you can see the wings here are more horizontal and the wings on this one are more angled. Here one is high and one is down low. And the reason that it's like that is because I wanted to shift the motor this way and get it closer to this carriage without hitting the backer, of course. And I wanted to go a little bit more, but there is a third bolt here. I believe it's this one, this bolt right here. See that little bolt hole right there? If you start to swing this motor more, it's going to get into that hole. So I've got that hole right now about a 1/2 millimeter from the motor's protrusion, and so you see it's sticking over here to the side pretty good. This new bracket enabled me to lower that motor even more, so much so that this heat sink is only 9.5 millimeters tall. Now I had to make a special little nozzle inside. This little piece of plastic is my nozzle comes back here into the side, and it directs that air across the whole side of that heat sink, and it blows it out the side. It's probably not enough heat sink, but we are sinking some of this heat to here. But it's important that there's a filament, there's a PTFE tube that goes down inside here, down to about here, and you know, you don't want that to melt, and so you've got to get that heat out as much as possible. I've been printing with it, and I have no issue at all. I do have the bird turned up to 100% now versus 70%, and this thing is sitting right around 40°C when it's printing, so it seems okay at this point. I have not printed a lot of closed chamber prints with it. Who knows, or even PLA, so it may fail. I don't know. I don't care. I mean, if it does, that's fine. I can make a different heat sink that's wider to get that. Instead of going up, I'll just go wide and it'll be just fine. So now I have taken the tool board and I've lowered the tool board in the back here. And I've taken the tool board and I've attached it to some standoffs on the back side of the motor. This is really not my preferred way because I have to add longer bolts here, longer bolt here. I've got to add this standoff. But what and so if I want to take the extruder off, well, the whole tool board comes with it, and that's the part I don't like. But I don't take it off very often, so it's not that big of a deal. Now, as an added bonus, this tool board right here is right up against the back of the motor can. So any heat from this motor is going to go into this plate and it's going to just wick off. So it's connected to the extruder where it's going to take away some heat, and also to the back side. It's kind of like a built-in heat sink or a dual purpose kind of mount here. So this motor is lowered about 20 millimeters. Now the top plate, instead of being this big piece here for a top plate, now I only have this teeny little plate here. The thing only weighs about 3.5 grams. It's only about 15 millimeters wide by maybe 40 millimeters long. So the extruder is rigid in that it cannot go down at all. It can, however, go up. And I'm going to add to this more than likely another bolt that is going to grab a hold of one of these standoffs and push down on it. And then what I also did is I went with just the wire loom clamp here. Before I had another, let me get a little shot of it here. So before I had this little gizmo, and there's no bolts. The bolts went through here and bolted to the back side of this, and then this hose here, well, you would just take this little piece here, put your hose in here, slide this over, and press it in there. Didn't need to bolt it in. It stayed secure. The little tension from the hose on there kept that thing held in place. But since this is the only thing that holds this on here, is this rubber tube. And I really didn't want to cut this because the plastic in here is really super thin. And I was afraid that was going to break, and I'd have to keep on cutting it shorter and shorter and shorter. And it just works well to just slide this on here. There's a taper on that rear duct, so it expands out the lower part of this, and this thing ain't coming off. It hasn't came off yet. And so I just kind of let it flop here. It would be nice to have something to retract this up and on a key retractor or something, but that's what I've got for now. I changed the top mount here to hold the bird hose, and it's over here on the side there. So this is a pretty good setup so far. It seems to be printing pretty good. I've changed the duck here with the black and yellow. I want to go with red and yellow kills a fellow, because this machine has been killing me. I've just been killing me. So this is what we got here. Kind of a minimalist tool head there. This whole tool head without the carriage block weighs 265 grams, I want to say. Something like that. I weighed it yesterday. I think it's 264 something. So that's with everything on it, all the bolts, everything, every single thing on here is 264. So, and then of course you add these carriages, and everything starts to add up. So I think my total moving mass right now is 1,250 grams. 1,250 grams is quite a bit of moving mass. So anyway, that's where we're at today. I say I'm finished with the tool head. Let's see what happens. See if I can keep my hands off this thing. Anyway, happy printing.